guys, it's Danny. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing one of Kaisercraft's off-the-page projects. This is the advent calendar, and as you can see I have gone ahead and painted all the separate pieces all on their own off camera, and I used a raw umber, just a acrylic paint to paint all these. And as you can see, you get the base, you get all the sort of side and center pieces, and then all the little bits to make the drawers out of. So this might be a bit confusing as I'm explaining what I'm doing, but it will all make a lot more sense at the end when you see it all come together. So to start with, I am going ahead and taping all the little advent boxes together, and you just need to, they're all pre-scored, so you just need to bend them up, and then I just use a strip of tape around the outside of each piece. This is going to get covered later. And I do skip through a lot of this because it took me a long time to do, and I don't want you guys to have to watch everything. So to start off with, I'm going to do my outside pieces with paper. So I'm just going to cover them with some of this white wood grain paper from the Kaisercraft Wonderland collection. So I'm just going to cut these into strips of about 5 centimeters, just a little over 5 centimeters, and then I'm going to glue them onto the outside of the calendar. Now this didn't work out exactly how I wanted to because there are some pieces that overlap. It's a bit hard to explain without actually showing you in person, but to be honest, I probably should have left this till I'd assembled everything, but it does make it a lot easier to trim off excess if you haven't assembled it yet. So if you are comfortable with cutting all your paper exactly right and then lining it up exactly right, you could do it afterwards. The centerpieces, I would definitely, as you'll see later, it would be very difficult to put those on after you assembled it. But if you're just going to paint it, this isn't an issue. But I wanted to use some of the decorative paper. So I'm just using tacky glue here and covering that nice and evenly. Now I have cut strips from the 12 by 12 papers, but as you can see, some of these pieces are a bit longer than 12 by 12, so I just added some extra pieces onto the end. You'll see here, it does leave a little line. I don't really care. You definitely, I mean, no one's going to be looking at the finished product that carefully, and at the end of the day, it looks really lovely, so I'm quite happy with it as it is. But you can get around it by cutting strips diagonally. If you cut them straight from corner to corner, you can get them long enough to make a full strip to cover each of these. So I'm just going to go ahead here and trim off the excess. And then I'm going to do all 4 outer edges, I suppose, or outer sides. And I don't mind that a bit of the pattern gets on that wood grain there. It's not a full wood grain page, it's got some Christmas trees and some stars and things, so they do end up on there, but I think they give a little bit of visual interest anyway. They're quite pretty. Go, and the very last piece, which is the bottom, so it doesn't really matter at all. You could probably just leave that, but I wanted to be consistent just in case I do end up hanging it on the wall. You will see it from the bottom, but if you're putting it on a shelf, it doesn't matter. Okay, now I have my 4 sort of interior walls. This is kind of hard to explain, but what I'm going to do is a little living room scene with my interior section. So I took the top piece away because that's going to be the ceiling of my living room and you're not going to see it. So you can see here, they end up being 4 sort of little walls around a big central sort of square. So I'm going to put on my floor, I'm going to put some of this white wood grain from the 6 by 6 paper pad, or 6.5 by 6.5 paper pad, and this is basically the same white as on the outside of the calendar, but it's a little bit smaller and it doesn't have that extra decorative stuff on it. So it's just a white wood grain, perfect for a living room floor. So same thing, just some tacky glue, spreading it out evenly and popping that down. And obviously it's a little bit short, but here we go. I'm just going to pop the rest of that sheet right up against it, and you don't even see the join in the end. And as you'll see later, I put lots of decorative bits and pieces in here, so I will warn you, this is quite a long video. I did my best to cut out all the boring parts, but it does, even so, still run quite long. Okay, so now I am going to pick my wallpaper. So I was trying to go for something that was as close to wallpaper, I suppose, as I could get. and I was tossing up between this tiny heart print and this sort of scalloped pattern, and I'm kind of sad I didn't go with the scallop pattern in the end because it does look more like wallpaper, but the pattern's a bit busier, so I guess it was probably a good thing that I went with this smaller print here. So those were both from, this one was from the Wonderland collection, and the other one, the scalloped one, is from Mint Wishes. And I'm actually going to use a reverse of that to make my little fireplace. So here what I'm doing is I'm cutting out a big central square for the back of that calendar. And I'm just making it a little bit bigger than it needs to be because I don't want any of the dark paint showing through. And then I'm going to do my walls on either side as well. And same thing, just lots of glue, not too much glue, you know, just enough to give it a nice generous coating and get to all the edges. Just sticking that down. So you can see there I didn't actually paint the tabs, and the reason for that is it can make them swell up a bit, and it is hard to fit into those little notches you can see, so try not to paint those if you can. Okay, now I'm just going ahead with a nice generous coating of glue on the back there and sticking down my square, and as you will see when I put my shells in, it is a bit too big. But what I do at the end is, off camera, I just go back in with my paint and I repaint all those extra bits and you can't end up seeing them. Had a bit of a bubble, so I am going ahead with a bit of paper towel and just smoothing that all out nicely. Works perfectly. So because I did overlap a little bit, I've gone over my little slots, so I'm just cutting those out with my craft knife, and that didn't prove a problem at all. Okay, so popped in my floor there. So just a little bit of tacky glue on all the tabs, not too much. I do have a bit of excess that squeezes out, but I just wipe it off with my finger, just like that. Pretty easy. You won't really see inside the little boxes by the time it's all finished, so really it's just that big interior square you're worried about keeping neat. So as you can see at the top there, my paper overlaps a little bit too far, but I just go back in with that raw umber paint, and right at the end, off camera, works just fine. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and assembling the rest of the calendar, so putting all the little small pieces in all along the sides and the top and the bottom. And just making sure my drawers fit there before you do have a bit of time to move them before the glue fully dries. You might have been able to see there on the inside of that piece, that really messy sort of torn paper. I went with a different colour scheme when I first started this, and I didn't end up liking it. So I'd already glued down some paper, so I just ripped it up, and it looks horrible right now, but when I go in at the end and do all my little extra touch-up painting, I just paint over that, and you can't even see it's there. So no problem at all. Cleaning up all my excess glue. Okay, so I've let that dry, and now I'm going to build my little scene inside. So I'm taking this thick card, and this was just a backing paper off my watercolor paper actually, like my backing cardboard. So I'm just cutting it to the size that I want my little fireplace to be. And I want this to be dimensional, so I'm going to cut 2 squares the same size, and then I'm going to go ahead and sort of cut the hearth, I suppose. Cut the front section out to make like the chimney. I'm not sure, I don't have a fireplace. I live in Queensland, I don't know what the things are called, but the centerpiece, you know, the hole in the middle. You'll see what I mean in a minute. So this part, so I'm just cutting that little rectangle out of the front there, and then I will have another square to stick at the back. So there, dimension. So I'm going to pop the front bit up on some foam. I'm just going to use foam tape, and I'm going to put it right up to the edge so that I don't need to, it will form sort of part of the edge of the fireplace, and I'm doing it all the way around all the edges, just like that. And then I'm going to make my mantelpiece. So I'm just going to take another strip of the cardboard, make it a little bit longer than my fireplace is wide, and that will be my mantelpiece. And I'm just cutting off the corners there to make it look a bit more realistic, I suppose. And now I'm breaking into my Mint Wishes pack again. This is from Kaisercraft also, and I want that log paper, so that's going to be the interior of my fireplace. So I'm just cutting that out, just a square roughly, and then I will stick it onto the back square of my fireplace there. And I'm pretty happy with that. So I've trimmed off the excess, and I'm just going to stick my front piece down. And that's my fireplace base pretty much done. So before I continue, I'm going to just take some white acrylic paint, nothing fancy, it's just craft paint, and I'm going to paint all the edges white. So I'm going to go in with the decorative paper on the top, but I want those edges just to be white so they don't stand out and look messy and silly. And I go ahead and paint my mantelpiece white as well. So this is the paper I'm going to use for my fireplace. It's like a nice distressed sort of brick, white brick pattern. It's really pretty, and this is actually the reverse for that scalloped paper that I was considering for my wallpaper. So I've just cut out a piece to match the front there, and I'm going to stick it on. Look at that. Perfect little fireplace. I love it so much. Okay, my little mantelpiece, so I'm just going to glue that on with a little bit of tacky glue. This is just the Bunnings brand. I've heard the Scotch one is really good, but this is what I have, so I use it. It works fine. Okay, glued that on. Now, I know I'm doing a lot, like you don't have to go this full on, but I just had a vision in my head of what I wanted, so this is what I'm doing. I'm going to make a little like photo frame, picture frame for my family portrait. So the photo I'm using is the first photo we ever took as a family at Christmas time. So I'm going ahead and using some popsicle sticks, and I am just going to, you can see on my cutting mat there's little centimetre squares, and I'm just drawing a line from corner to corner to make a right angle. And I did have to trim these a couple of times. I'm using my scissors here, but it really was easier to use the craft knife. And I do that on all four corners, sort of getting an idea of the size I want here, and I glue them all together with some tacky glue. So you have to, it's a bit of a fiddle around trying to get those angles to line up right, but once you have it down and glued, it stays pretty well. And I painted that with some white paint as well off camera. Okay, now I'm going to pretty up my little boxes. So I'm pulling out some of the papers from the 6.5 by 6.5 paper pad, and I cut 4 strips from each of the papers that I used. I don't know why I did this one upside down. Doesn't matter. So I'm cutting out strips, and then I'm going to use some double-sided tape, and I'm just going to go around each box a couple of times with that. Now, I did overlap the first couple. I've tried to overlap them around the front of the box, but once they'd been sitting for about 10 minutes, the edges just popped straight off the front. They wouldn't stay no matter what I did. I tried glue, that didn't work. That was even worse. So what I end up doing is just cutting them so they're flush with the front. And you'll see when you see all the boxes done there that it's just flush to the edge. That seems to have stayed better. Not amazingly, they're still coming off a little bit now that I've been using it, but I don't know. I might have to go around and re-glue them all or something. Come up with a better solution. So now I'm using the Advent Calendar specialty paper from the Wonderland collection, and I'm cutting off all those strips, and I'm going to use those later. And then I'm going through and cutting out all the numbers. So there's lots of pretty decorative quotes and stuff in this pack, but I'm just taking the numbers. That was my phone, please excuse me. And just laying my boxes down over the top and drawing out that little notch. Then use my scissors just to cut out that little half circle. So if you had a punch the right size, that would probably be easier, but I just used my scissors. And then stuck them all down onto the front of the little drawers with a little double-sided tape. They look so good when they're all finished. Ta-da! Just like that. So a bit tedious to do them all, but I went ahead and did them all. And there's 24 little spots for boxes, but they give you 25 boxes, and I actually go ahead and use the other box in my little scene in the middle, which you'll see in a minute. Popping all those in. This was more challenging than you'd think. So there you go, there's my extra box, and I'm just going to use that as a little like a gift box. I've just covered it in some wood grain paper. That's some really old stuff I have, non-branded stuff. And I'm going to put everything together now. So in goes my little fireplace, And my photo frame all finished. I had to let that dry for a while. So just getting it on my photo so no one's face is covered up. And it only just fits in there, but it's okay. I am going to stick the entire thing down onto the back of, onto the wall, so it doesn't need to be perfectly glued to itself. There we go. I've moved it up a bit because I'm going to put some things on that mantelpiece. Glue my little box in. Ta-da! And this is just some like bead garland that I stole from my own Christmas tree. I just cut off a section and I'm just going to glue that on underneath the mantelpiece. I didn't think this would stay, but it has stayed just fine. It's been on there almost a week now and it hasn't come off. So as you can see, I add like a decent amount of glue though. But it holds really well, I'm surprised. Now I'm just going ahead and putting in some ornament stickers. These are from the Me and My Big Ideas seasonal Happy Planner sticker book. They're just some clear backed ornament stickers. There you go. And I'm going to make some cards from these strips. I'm just going to cut out some little rectangles and fold them in half. And they're all foiled, these strips, so they make really pretty little cards. And make 4 of those, and I just pop those down with a little bit of tacky glue off camera. Ta-da! Can you tell I love the finished product? I'm so proud of this. Okay, I'm making some little presents. You can see I've mostly made all of them there. I'm just doing one to show you. What I've used is just stacked foam board, like glued together. But you can use styrofoam, you can use anything that you can make into a present shape, basically. And I'm just wrapping them up with wrapping paper like you would wrap a regular size present. Just on a much smaller scale. So I cut my sticky tape in half lengthways to make that a little bit easier. So I didn't have like giant pieces of sticky tape on there, but they look really good in the end. And then on a couple of the presents, just these plain like brown and white wrapped ones, I am taking some embroidery thread and I am just making a couple of bows. This was fiddly, I'm not going to lie. It was fiddly and annoying and tedious, and I did curse a couple of times, but it looks really cute when it's done. So yeah, you just go ahead and make a normal size bow, like with huge loops you can see there, and then just press down on the knot and pull the ends through. And you end up with a perfect tiny little bow. Just cutting off the ends. And there we are. So cute. Okay, now I'm putting in my Christmas tree. So this is just a bottle brush Christmas tree, and I'm gluing it onto the top of this little gift, basically because I don't have a stand on it. You can see it's just the bottle brush, so I'm just gluing it on there to have it sort of anchored to something. And I'm just putting a tissue back there just to prop it up while the glue dries. It didn't want to stay upright, so that was really helping. And that's just until the glue dries, and then it's fine. So just fiddling with my presents. I spend a long time doing this, so I'm not going to make you watch it all. I skip through most of it, but I'm just getting them set where I like them, and then putting them in with a little bit of glue and making sure they don't go anywhere. And then same with the little box. Fuss around with this for a bit. But once I'm happy with them, just a little bit of glue and pop them in. Just to make sure they don't go anywhere. I love that so much. Okay, this is the Wonderland die cut pack, and I'm just taking that little sort of sprig of Christmas tree and a couple of these hearts sort of as wall decor, I suppose, and just a bit of glue on them, and that's done. So this took me about 3 days all up, I think, to make. A long time, but I love it. I'm so happy with how it turned out, and my kids love it too. So thank you so much for joining me. I really hope this inspired you to do some kind of Christmas craft of your own, and Merry Christmas. Bye guys.